Ancient Sith Lords, particularly those from the Old Republic era, would likely have had several reasons to dislike or look down on Darth Vader. Here are some key points that might explain their disdain. 1. Anakin's late turn to the dark side. Anakin Skywalker's transformation into Darth Vader occurred later in life, which is a significant deviation from the traditional Sith pathway. Ancient Sith Lords, such as those from the Old Republic era, often began their training in the dark side from an early age. This early indoctrination allowed them to fully embrace the Sith philosophy, internalize the Sith Code, and master the dark side without the conflicting ideals of the Jedi Order. Anakin, however, was deeply entrenched in the Jedi ways for the majority of his life. His late and sudden turn to the dark side would likely be seen by ancient Sith as indicative of an incomplete understanding of Sith philosophy. They might argue that Anakin's upbringing as a Jedi left him with a fundamentally flawed understanding of the Force, making him less effective as a Sith Lord. From their perspective, true Sith are forged through long years of struggle and commitment to the dark side, rather than a single act of desperation as was the case with Anakin's fall. Attachment and emotional weakness. The ancient Sith Code emphasizes the importance of controlling one's emotions and using them to fuel power. However, Anakin's turn to the dark side was driven by his deep attachment to Padme Amidala and his fear of losing her, a direct contradiction to the Sith ideal of rejecting all attachments. To the ancient Sith, attachment is seen as a weakness that can be exploited, not a source of strength. Moreover, Anakin's fear of loss and his obsessive desire to prevent it would be viewed as a flaw. Ancient Sith like Darth Bane or Darth Revan understood that the Sith must embrace loss, pain, and suffering as catalysts for power, not as obstacles to be avoided. The idea that Anakin could be manipulated into becoming a Sith Lord because of his attachment to a single person might be seen as an indication that he lacked the necessary detachment and ruthlessness that defines a true Sith. Reliance on cybernetics. After his duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar, Anakin was left severely wounded and was only able to survive through extensive cybernetic reconstruction. This reliance on technology would likely be seen by ancient Sith as a severe weakness. The Sith of the Old Republic era prided themselves on their mastery of the dark side of the Force, which they believed should make them superior to ordinary beings, both physically and mentally. For instance, Sith like Darth Malgus and Darth Vader himself were heavily augmented by technology, but the ancient Sith might see this as a crutch rather than a source of power. The Sith believed in the purity of strength derived from the Force, not from external enhancements. The ancient lords might argue that a true Sith should rely on the Force to heal and empower themselves, rather than becoming dependent on machines. Vader's iconic suit, while intimidating, could be seen as a symbol of his vulnerability rather than his strength. Subservience to Emperor Palpatine. In the ancient Sith tradition, the relationship between a Sith apprentice and their master was one of mutual manipulation and eventual betrayal. The Rule of Two, established by Darth Bane, dictated that the apprentice should eventually challenge and overthrow the master, continuing the cycle of power and ensuring that only the strongest could lead the Sith. Darth Vader's relationship with Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, however, was one of subservience for nearly 2 decades. Despite his immense power, Vader never truly challenged Sidious for supremacy until the very end, and even then, it was driven by a desire to save his son rather than a pure lust for power. Ancient Sith Lords might see this as a sign of weakness, a failure to fully embrace the Sith philosophy of ambition and the relentless pursuit of power. They would likely argue that a true Sith would never be content with being second in command for so long without attempting to seize power. Failure to revive the Sith Empire. The ancient Sith Lords were often rulers of vast empires, commanding legions and waging wars across the galaxy. Figures like Naga Sadow, Exar Kun, and Darth Revan sought not just personal power, but the revival and expansion of the Sith Empire, with the ultimate goal of galactic domination. Darth Vader, while immensely powerful and feared, was primarily an enforcer of the Emperor's will rather than a leader in his own right. He played a crucial role in the maintenance of the Galactic Empire, but this was an empire ruled by the ideology of the Sith in name only. It lacked the Sith culture, traditions, and hierarchy that defined the ancient Sith empires. The ancient Sith Lords might have seen Vader as someone who had the potential to revive the Sith in their full glory, but failed to do so, instead allowing himself to be a tool of Sidious vision rather than creating his own. Redemption and return to the light. Perhaps the greatest reason for the ancient Sith Lord's disdain would be Vader's ultimate redemption. At the end of his life, Anakin Skywalker returned to the light side of the Force, sacrificing himself to destroy the Emperor and save his son, Luke Skywalker. This act would be seen as the ultimate betrayal of everything the Sith stood for. The Sith Code emphasizes the pursuit of power, the embrace of the dark side, and the rejection of the light. By turning back to the light, Vader essentially renounced the dark side, something that no true Sith Lord would ever consider. Ancient Sith, who often viewed their path as an all-consuming way of life, would see this as an unforgivable failure. For them, death in the pursuit of power, no matter how tragic or violent, was preferable to a return to the weakness of the light. Lack of mastery over the Sith arts. Ancient Sith Lords were often highly skilled in various Sith arts, including alchemy, dark sorcery, and the creation of Sith artifacts. These practices were a significant part of their power and identity, allowing them to achieve immortality, create powerful weapons, and dominate others through the dark side in ways beyond simple lightsaber combat or Force abilities. Darth Vader, while a master of lightsaber combat and the Force, did not delve deeply into these more esoteric aspects of Sith power. He was a warrior and enforcer, but he did not engage in the kind of Sith sorcery or alchemy that ancient lords like Darth Nihilus, Darth Plagueis, or Darth Bane practiced. This lack of engagement with the deeper Sith mysteries might lead ancient Sith to view him as somewhat superficial in his approach to the dark side, valuing brute strength over the more subtle and insidious powers that the Sith could wield. Conclusion. In conclusion, ancient Sith Lords would have viewed Darth Vader with a mix of disdain and disappointment. While acknowledging his power and accomplishments, they would likely see him as a flawed and incomplete Sith, a tragic figure who never fully realized the potential of the dark side. His late conversion, emotional weaknesses, reliance on technology, subservience to Sidious, failure to revive the Sith Empire in its full glory, ultimate redemption, and lack of mastery over deeper Sith arts would all be seen as significant shortcomings. In the eyes of the ancient Sith, Darth Vader was powerful, but he fell short of the true ideals and ambitions that defined their vision of what it means to be a Sith Lord.